Hi, and welcome back to your favorite nerdy, unhinged podcast. Today you are joined by me, the face of FanCorner,
Yay!
the lovely Jalaire. Jalaire, the way we missed you so much around here.
Aw, I
Because
missed
the last
you guys.
podcast we had a different guest host, and it was like, what are we doing? Like, literally, I was like, you're like I said the face of he didn't even woo. He didn't even woo.
Well,
What up with that?
he's gonna have to learn sometime. So
I know. That's true. That's true.
Mhm.
But like I told y'all last time, but a quick reminder, Jalaire is still the main co-host of the podcast. She's not going anywhere. I felt like I was gonna panic at people because, like,
oh my gosh,
beloved
they probably
characters.
were like, "Where did she go?" No, I've just never watched Friends. That's all.
Yeah, just occasionally. Then we'll, weeks Jalaire's busy, we'll do something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Occasionally we have fandoms that don't cross over, and Friends is one of them.
What?
Yeah.
How dare you? No, it's fine. I've only gotten you into about 1 million fandoms. Like, we can't do everything.
We can't do more.
All at once.
And I mean, one of them is going to be what today's episode is about. Finally,
that's true.
After
this
years
was a forced
of
thing.
talking about it, we are talking about the first Crescent City book.
I've only been bugging her to read this book since I knew her.
Yeah, I was like, literally since we became friends.
Yeah, it was like maybe even on a first date. I was like, so have you read Crescent City yet?
Yeah, but I was like, oh, I need to read ACOTAR, so
yeah, and then I was like, oh,
however long it was.
I was like, that's like a 2-month endeavor. Like, you got this. And it's totally fine. It didn't take 2 months, but it was just so funny. I think I was just in that phase where I didn't sleep. I just read books. So I was a little delulu about time frames at the time. It's fine.
No, but I mean, finally, after talking about it for forever, I read Crescent City 1, House of Blood, Earth and Blood. I almost swapped those words.
It's okay. It's a mouthful. Before we get into our main topic, though, we got to tell people what's going on in your life.
Oh, so, yeah.
What's your mid right now?
It's kind of sad, but my mid is Princess Peach Showtime. And we were so excited for this game to come out. We've talked about it on the podcast before. And while Rachel was at WonderCon and I was watching her cutie cats, I was able to play Rachel's copy of the game. And while it looked cute and fun, it was so mid. And
so mid.
Very
it was not like a
disappointing.
Mario game with Princess Peach as the lead. That's not what it was.
No, and like some of the levels were kind of fun once you got Peach's costume, but until you got that point, it's kind of like, what are we doing? And sometimes it'd be like 3/4 of the way through the level.
Yeah.
And the levels aren't even that long. They're maybe like 15 minutes.
Yeah, the way she would defeat baddies was like spinning her dress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then they would magically get less grumpy. And you're like, oh, okay. It was really weird. It's funny because it was literally my high last podcast episode. Is I was like, I just got Princess Peach, and then I played it. It was like, what? Like,
yeah.
So that's a valid mid. I feel you really hard. Also, the controllers weren't as pink as they were advertised, which was really mid.
I know. I remember being really excited about them, and I didn't buy them, but Rachel did, and they turned out weren't they more neon?
Yeah, they're like neon, and like, okay, so I recognize it's for the Princess Peach game, so no one freaking attitude me on this, okay? But we were promised, like, what I wanted was what I was shown, which was pastel pink. Do you know what I mean? And then instead, they gave me pastel peach. And I get that it was for the Peach game, but that's not what you put on the cover and in all the advertisements.
Totally.
So, to you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so annoying.
Yeah. So disappointments on that game all around. And
all around.
I played pretty much the entire game, save for the last 10 levels in the basement. And I was like, this is... I wanted more.
So what's crazy is I Googled how long it would take to play when you were trying to run through it, and Google was like about 4 hours.
Yeah.
For a $60 game. What?
Yeah, and then like insane. Some parts I was like, what am I supposed to do? Because there's like bosses that you fight when you're done with like the floor you're on. And sometimes I would be like, what am I even supposed to do? Like, it wasn't really
Right.
clear. So I watched YouTube videos, and there'd be YouTube videos of people with like, here's my whole playthrough, and it was 7 hours long. And I'm like,
That's not a good
okay,
sign, bro. Like, I know
no.
Mario's are quicker games, like Mario style games, from the universe, but they're usually like you can usually sink your teeth into them if you're trying to be a completionist. And this one, it's like even completionist, yeah, 7 hours. That's not a good sign for $60.
No, definitely not.
Maybe
but
we'll
Rachel,
get a
what
good
was
one day.
one day, hopefully. Justice for Princess Peach, for real.
Preach.
So Rachel, what was your mid this week?
So my mid is okay, so I don't want to sound like whiny though, but like my mid is
It's your podcast.
That's true. It is my podcast. It's fine. I applied for something as like an artist. I applied like I don't want to like add anyone or whatever, but like if you slide into my DMs, I'll tell you the tea. I applied for something as an artist, and this one particular one I applied for is supposed to be like Ivy League shit, right? Like jumping through this application process, you know, like how many followers you have because we want to make sure you're promoting our stuff too. How much this, how much that. And then you're like paying to be part of this thing too. So it was like the craziest thing. But this particular one is supposed to be the best, right? And they're very intense and they're very like, you know, a panel of people will review this application. Mostly what they were looking for, as was communicated to me and everyone else, was unique artists to be part of this thing. And I was like not worried, not in a cocky way, but I was just like, oh, if that's the onerous, I'm incredibly unique. Like no one makes or does the things that I make or do. So I'll be fine. I also had a reference. Like I had everything.
It literally sounds like a college application.
I mean, it essentially was. Like, bitch, it was crazy. And I got a denial last week.
Yeah.
And it was devastating because I was like, this isn't like not getting into other things where it's like first come first serve or like I didn't have the money in time or like, do you know what I mean? Instead, this was literally like, you weren't the best fit. Come back next year. And I was like,
okay. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
And I guess maybe where it gets more positive, more silver lining-y is, you know, because I'm devastated about this. Like, I was having a panic attack. Like, my whole worth was on, like, the line here. They got back to me on the reasoning. And the reasoning, low-key, I did text it to Jalaire. And I think Jalaire will back me up on this, even though I'm not going to give specifics, was, like, they just fundamentally misunderstood something. Like, obvious about my business, and it looks like they were like, oh, like they loved XYZ about you, you were really great, like you'll probably get in next year, but there was this one thing, and I was like you don't have enough like stuff to be at our show or our thing. But
no,
I was like, wait, what?
Was weird.
I was like, LOL, what? Because that's just categorically not true. And so I guess the silver lining is just that like you can think something is about like a meritocracy, right? And so then it can be so upsetting when you don't get into it because you're like, well, I did the things, I did everything perfectly, I did all the things I could do to stick this landing, and there's still politics, there's still bias, there's still whatever, and like we know that like logically, but when you get those denials, it feels not like that. And I'm very lucky in that they did get back to me with the reasoning. And so I was able to sort of be like, whoa, this literally had nothing to do with me, like, at all. But, like, I guess that's kind of the silver lining is that there are always other things at play, and it truly has nothing to do with you.
No, seriously. Yeah. It was, reading, like, the explanations they gave you was really weird, and it was, like, definitely, like, not anything you did wrong. It was, they didn't take the time, more or less, to see what you can bring to the table.
I think I was almost too unique. So they were like, wait, what? It was like, took too much thinking, and they were like, instead of asking a question, they're just like, no. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy. Yeah, no. It'll be okay. There's always more things to get into. So.
It's absolutely fine. Because we have some highs coming up now. So, Jalaire, what is your high right now?
Well, I just binge read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, all 3 books in the span of a week, which
Whoa.
has not happened in a long time. And are the books like perfect? No. But I had so much fun reading them. And like based on the title, Once Upon a Broken Heart, it implies like fairy tale, vibes. And that's pretty much what it gave me. It was like fairy tale vibes and tropes without being like too overly tropey. And everything about it was so fun. And I had the best time listening to those books. So
I love that so much, especially like I feel like when you binge something, whether it's a TV show or a book, it becomes this like tactile memory for you. And so that's like always so exciting when those can happen.
Yeah. And like I've wanted to read those books for a long time, but it was pretty much I saw a fan art on Instagram and that's what convinced me to read it. I don't know what it was. It was a very simple like here's a portrait of our 2 main characters. And I was like
it
I like
speaks
it.
to me.
I know. I was like our main protagonist has pink hair. Let's go.
Enough said. Say less.
Yeah. And
I'm obsessed
they
with
always
that.
draw them in the cutest like fairy tale-esque outfits. And I'm like, this is so cute. So yeah.
That's literally how I read A Touch of Darkness for the first time, is I saw like a sweatshirt with a quote on it. And I was like, that sounds like that's from something. Like it was sussly too good to just be like, whatever. So I Googled the quote and I was like, say less, went to Barnes & Noble immediately. Like, I think that's such a fun way to like have a binge. So slay.
Yeah, it was fun. What is your high? I feel like mine kind of leads into yours.
Yeah, I think it actually kind of does. So I actually just barely got my fairy tale illustrator found. So yeah, thank you. So I wrote a fairy tale, think like Neil Gaiman meets Disney. Like, so it's a hopeful, bright, beautiful world, but it's like dark subject matter. And so it's a dark fairy tale, but I'm very excited about it. And I've been working on getting an illustrator for months, which is why no one's heard about it. But I have an illustrator, which means I have a launch day for the fairy tale. So the launch day is going to be the beginning of March.
Next year.
Yeah, next year. Obviously, because we just passed March. So that's a bummer. My illustrator's so high in demand or whatever, but she's working on the cover art right now. I'm going to have concept art in my hands tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
So that way, she'll do the cover first and then do her other projects she's doing. Do the illustrations for the fairy tale, but we've talked extensively about our vision. I really like where we're going. And this way I can have that cover like for pre-order for everyone, like at LeakyCon, and like start promoting this summer. So I know it's far away, but in a lot of ways it actually, now that I'm like getting my mind around it, it feels like the perfect amount of time in a lot of ways.
Totally. It's kind of crazy how things like fall into place like that, you know?
Yeah. And so hopefully it turns out good. It's scary. Like, who's this bitch thinks she can write a book? That's a weird. That's like way weirder than starting a podcast.
I know. But like I've read your draft, well, at least 2 years ago draft. I'm sure it's grown so much more since then, but I remember reading it and loving it. So I'm really excited.
Thanks. Yeah, Jalera was one of the first people to read it, actually. That was like a high like honor.
Yeah.
I've offered it to a few people, and like there were like 1 or 2 people where like they took too long to read it, and so I revoked access because I was like, no. Like if it meant something to you, you would have read it. Just like revoke access.
Totally. I mean, I remember growing up, I had friends that were, writing their own like books or whatever, and theirs were like, chapter long sagas, right? And I was like, I don't got the bandwidth to read this on my computer as a child, but there's something so nice about like a cute fairy tale. So
yeah, it's definitely digestible. Like it's not like I'm like, here, I need 8 hours of your time, thank you.
Yeah, like please be my beta reader for 24 hours of your time, like
no. It like I think at most 30 minutes to read.
Yeah.
So like it's pretty short. Like, you think of like Coraline. That's kind of a similar comparison, I would say, to what I did. And so I am
Yeah.
illustrating it a lot more than Coraline, so it is shorter, but it's not like a traditional like that's why I'm not saying children's book.
Yeah.
Fairy tale.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So I'm
Cool.
excited. Thank you so much. And then I think we're ready to get into the main topic.
Let's go.
This is always like such an intense moment because I feel like we're like getting into
we're
it.
ready to go. Anytime we talk about books or like getting deep into something, we're like, okay, let's.
Yeah, it's like game face on. You know, you cannot be casual about this.
Yeah.
Because we have to give hot takes. Okay, Crescent City, all right? AKA the fantasy version of Zootopia, right?
Yeah. No, seriously.
I've seen that comparison made so everywhere. But it's literally
like,
true.
It makes sense. It
totally
and
does.
Like, I remember, so here's like the cool, yeah. But like, here's the cool thing. As far as like me being on Book Talk, I knew the least amount this series going into it versus like Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, right?
Yeah.
And so everything was kind of surprised. So I'd heard like the Zootopia comparison before, and that made me kind of go, I don't know if I want to read it. You know what I mean? But then I remember Rachel being like, but the messengers are otters. And I was like, yeah, okay, but the otters are only mentioned like twice in book one. And then I also remember, I think you told me it was a murder mystery. And I was like, why has no one told me that? I would have read it way sooner.
It's so funny because like if someone had mentioned murder mystery to me, the way I would have been like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not interested. I hate murder mysteries. So it's so funny, like the hook, like everyone needs a different hook. Especially, like, to be fair, like, it's a thick book. Like, this does not ease you into it. Like, I feel like ACOTAR Throne of Glass isn't as big of a book. And like, especially the second one's like double that, I swear. We're talking over 1,000 pages.
Yeah, so, it's on my bookcase, but yeah, it's a lot longer.
And obviously, you know, it's funny when you're saying like the Zootopia thing didn't vibe for you. I will say, you know, urban fantasies are not most fantasy girlies go to.
No.
They're a little weird. Cruel Prince technically is an urban fantasy.
I would say it is, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, because they're set in that time. But yet they're in their own bubble. Do you know what I mean? Like, you enter the Fae world and it's not like they have tech and stuff. So it's like urban fantasy, not really. Same with Harry Potter. It's like, okay, we're during like an actual time period, like a more recent time period, but it's still, they're in a bubble, right? Like, they're not using Muggle tech. And so I think there's a removedness from it. And so something that was crazy about this for me, because I was so hesitant. I was like, yeah, exactly like you. I was like, I don't know. If I'd seen that before I read it, I don't think I would have been into it. But I think it's very seamlessly kind of interwove like fantasy elements with things like cell phones in a way that didn't make you want to like just eat yourself off a building.
Totally. That was one of the things I genuinely liked about it, was that it's like sometimes when you read, you know, like we mentioned Cruel Prince or even Harry Potter, it's like, okay, but like when you've had like, I don't know, some sort of phone. I mean, granted, like Harry Potter was like the 90s, but like early 90s as far as like where it takes place. But still, or like, oh, somebody, they would have like maybe had more things to protect themselves
instead of email.
Yeah, no. They would have 100% had dial-up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, they would have.
You know, like yeah. So I really love that we were utilizing technology, and it was like a true urban fantasy to me. And I just like appreciated how it was used. It's not like, oh, we used it for part one and then yeet, it got dipped because, you know, we're a fantasy book, so let's focus on the Fae aspect of it. You know what I mean?
It really shows the power of human tech throughout the whole thing. Like, think about when she kills the Archangel. Okay, so technically there's a bit of magic involved still, right? Because it's an urban fantasy. But it is a gun that she uses.
Yes.
Like, it's a shotgun, right? It just has, like, a magical bullet that, like, will hurt his kind of being. So, like, that was cool because, I mean, how many, and to be fair, to some extent, these people annoy the hell out of me, but we've all heard those people with Harry Potter. They're like, oh, I could solve the Horcruxes, get a whatever. And you're like, first of all, shut up. But like,
Yeah.
it was really cool to see them use every resource available to them, not just the magic.
Totally. And like, there's so many key moments that revolve around like answering text messages or messages sent to people, answering the phone, just like security footage, like all these things that make sense that it would be around. So
I also think
I
it
loved
kind of, in a lot of ways, like, obviously we all relate to fantasy characters, right? That's why we read fantasy books. Because even though dragons aren't real, the things they represent are very real, right? However, I think it being an urban fantasy made us all relate to Bryce in a very different way than other characters, even within the SJM universe.
Yeah, 100%. Because, like, at first I was like, I don't know about Bryce. It's just like in the very beginning, because this book series is so drastically different than Throne of Glass and ACOTAR. And so I was like, I don't know how I feel about Bryce, and then a lot of things she goes through are really relatable as a woman. And
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, it was insane.
No, it's so interesting you bring that up because, like, a lot of her sort of vices that are portrayed at least as vices, right? Like, she loves how she looks. She parties with her friends. You and me are not partiers.
No.
That's just not our vibe. However, as a woman, I think something that really spoke to me is when what happens at the beginning, whatever. If they're this far along, they know what happens. Okay, when the whole pack dies, right? And she's at the nightclub. I feel like we see her the rest of the book. It talks back to this time. She was treated so poorly because she wasn't a perfect victim, because she was partying, because she had been on drugs that night, because she was wearing a slutty dress and hooking up with a guy. Like, people were circulating those text messages with her and her bestie, like, vibing and laughing and having a good time. People were circulating those text messages to be like, see, she almost deserved this. While her friends were dying, this is what she was doing. When, like, does it change it?
No. And then even like 2 years later, when we get the time skip, people are still treating her that way.
Yes.
And that's what's like literally insane. And I remember specifically reading I remember reading this and then seeing it when I was flipping through the book again. Because my book copy is hello, Sirius.
I just suddenly, in the like corner of my eye, he was like in the camera, and I was like, what the hell is that? That's dark. That's really creepy.
I know. His eyes were like staring into my soul.
True void cat behavior.
Seriously, no. But like, so my copy of Crescent City I bought used, and so there's some random bits that are highlighted, and we'll talk about some of those later. But one of the things I saw that was highlighted was Bryce saying like, everyone like around her was drinking, and she hasn't had a drink in 2 years. Yeah, and that's before Danica even died, right? And I was like, holy shit. Like, she's still a partier. Like, obviously that's who she is. You go, girl. But she's like, I'm just like avoiding alcohol and like trying to, because she wants to, and just like, again, with all these other vices and things that she had, vices, right? Right. They still just judge her for everything, and they assume she was drinking as well. Right. Because she was there.
It's crazy because, like, she's not even, like, she's completely walked away from that lifestyle. Like, she's not a partier anymore. Like, she was, the only reason she was back at that nightclub was for a work meeting. Do you know? Yeah. Like, and so I think it's really sad. And, she leans more into, like, reality TV watching and things like that. And I think that that's so sad because, it's things like when she got those cupcakes that I think said she was a slut or something. Yeah. Or a whore.
That's what they said. Yeah.
When she was honoring Danica's birthday. Yeah. So it's like that really
was so sad.
Awful time for that to happen.
Yeah.
But I just, this was a life-changing event, not just because she lost her best friend and like her whole sense of community, really, but also because the world shamed her and judged her so much. And actually, okay, this kind of gets into one of my hot takes. Okay. Hunt does the same fucking shit the second he meets her. Right? Yeah, he does. He's like, she's just a party girl because she has nice nails and she has nice hair and she whatever. Yeah. And later, he says that he recognizes it's armor and that she's like, when she's at the nail salon, she's actually getting information. because she knows how to work a fucking room and network like a boss queen. But
and he also assumed she killed Danica too.
Yeah, he assumes all kinds of crazy, like, oh, she's drugged out, even though she's a human. He knows, like, he's like, she couldn't physically do that, but yet somehow she's at fault. He treats her like shit. Shit. And it makes me, I don't know, for me, that I ever get over it. Yeah. Because he never truly, like, you know, obviously he ends up liking those things about Bryce and calling it her armor and stuff, but would he think the same thing about a different party girl? Like, quote unquote. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet he fucking would have. And what is wrong with her having, I actually, if you want to think about it, it's beautiful she had all those times with her friends partying because that was bonding that they did before Danica died. Would it have been better if she was just studying for hours at a time? Do you know what I mean? Like, it was the perfect example of, like, she was a victim. It was her apartment broken into, her friends murdered. She went after the fucking killer that same night. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just no care for her own self-well-being. And yet she's, but because she wasn't a perfect victim, she's treated badly. And I think that really resonates with people about this series.
Totally. 100%. Ugh. Yeah, I also, maybe it leads into the next thing we want to talk about. I, again, knowing nothing about this, immediately after I finished Rachel, well, like when we met in person, Rachel asked me what I thought about Hunt. Okay. And he's probably I'd heard more about Rune, honestly, and just that he's a hot piece of ass, right?
People are obsessed with Rune.
You know, everyone's obsessed with this man. Like, sure, we all like the Akatar boys' physiques,
that
right?
Rune Dannon, like, TikTok sound, Rune Dannon, the Prince of the Valbar and Fae. And everyone's like, yeah, like, partying to it. Plays through my head endlessly, bitch. Like,
it's so funny. So when, like, Hunt came on the scene, this is so embarrassing because, like, I didn't know anything going into this. But when Hunt first appeared, I'm like, oh, okay, no, I don't like this guy. And I still don't really like him. But I remember, like, I've heard more about Rune, but he's her, like, half-brother. Are they gonna get together? Like, you know, I only hear
you're like, maybe it's like a fake half-brother? That's so funny,
No,
Jolaire.
I was like, I've only heard about this man and Bryce. So I didn't know they were siblings until they dropped that nugget in the story. So the whole time when he appeared, I'm like, okay, they're gonna fuck later. Like, obviously they did not.
You're like looking for weird clues. So funny and awkward. This on TikTok. Like, this is going on TikTok.
That's fine. That's so fine. But like, so funny. It was so wild. And so then, like, Hunt and Bryce get together eventually because they kind of just like trauma bond in their forced proximity, honestly.
Yeah, totally a forced proximity thing.
And like, whatever. I don't care for their relationship at all. But like, I was also thinking, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I trust SJM. Is she gonna be with somebody else later? Or are we gonna throw they were mates? Like, because she has mates in like every series, right? So I'm like, okay, when are we gonna get that? Eventually, maybe. I don't know. I know nothing about the other books other than SJM Avengers at the end of book 2, but that's like the only thing I know. And I don't even know what that means.
LOL. But you know, I have to say, I feel so grateful that I happen to not be on Book Talk at all. When I read Akatar and when I read the very first Crescent City, bitch, the way I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I mean, I still know nothing, which is fun considering,
but no,
like,
you knew the Rune Dannon thing. That's such a funny thing that you're like, what's happening? Like, that's hilarious, Jolaire.
No.
That's so funny.
And like, at this point, I like Rune way more than Hunt. Like,
well, to be fair, Rune's a more compelling character, and I think the real romance of the book is not Hunt and Bryce. Hunt, I agree. Hunt, I don't dislike Hunt as a human being.
Yeah, no, I don't like. It's not like that. Hate him. I'm just like, I don't really
like them
their relationship. Yeah,
yeah. Like, I don't forgive him for some of the stuff he thought and did and said.
Yeah.
Period. I also, however, I don't think they've really bonded over anything particularly cool. Yeah. Like, she's bringing all of the good to his life and not vice versa.
Exactly.
In my opinion. Like, she's the one that's, like, taking cute photos on his phone and, like, making him live life and, like, doing all these things and encouraging him to go out with friends. Like, she's the one doing those things for him. And what does he do for her? Maybe make sure she eats. Maybe. Yeah. And I don't even think he really does that very successfully. So
he made her fucking worry. And she was worried for days, thinking he died. For however long it was.
Yeah, it wasn't days. It wasn't days, to be clear.
It felt like
that's
days,
fair,
to
that's
be
fair.
honest.
I feel like it was like from the afternoon to like late at night, which is still a long time. But like,
it's still a long time. And she hadn't heard from him. And so then she called Rune and was like, oh my gosh, where is he? And then Hunt comes through the door and she's the one that takes care of him. And that whole scene made me emotional because of just the emotional intensity of it and like how loving those gestures were of her taking care of him. But at the same time, I was like, like that was nice of her to do, but like I don't believe in their romance.
It was a beautiful moment, and I think it is something Hunt absolutely deserves. Is people to care about him, but again, I just don't believe the romance between them. Like, sure, lust, absolutely, but I don't. I'm not buying it. Like, so it's funny because I think the most like funny part of their relationship, because if you look at other like SJM or whatever universes, I feel like the characters have like more bonding moments, like Rashand and Feyre. For all you know, I have problems with Rashand too. All of SJM's men, I'm like slightly
all of them
great.
Have some issues.
The women are just way better. But I mean, that's life. You know what I mean?
You know,
but like they're more like, I feel like their banter and stuff is like much more authentic and like whatever, and it builds. And the only one I really remember with Hunt, to be fair, it was really funny and I think about it all the time, is when he was caught like kind of snooping and she was like, were you looking for my vibrators or something? And then she's like, top nightstand drawer, and like he finds her jelly bellies or whatever they're called, like the little unicorn plushies.
Basically her unicorn toys.
I technically think they're Pegasuses, but
I'm gonna find out right now. Pegasi, maybe?
I don't know. But anyway, like, it was honestly so fucking funny. And I just hit my own headphones, so that's gonna sound great.
That's okay. I'm like, oh yeah, Jelly Jubilee from the Starlight Fancy franchise.
That was
Pegasus,
so funny.
Half unicorn. So we were right.
So, a Pegasus with a horn?
Yeah. Half Pegasus, half unicorn.
That's funny. That is actually really funny. We were both right too. I just knew they flew, and I was like, so they have to have fucking wings, bitch. Like,
yeah.
That's the only moment I remember them even like kind of doing that. Whereas, okay, so Rune and his girl though, Agent Daybright. I know who she actually is. But their romance was much more compelling to me, even though they've not met yet.
I'm excited because I'm like, I don't know. To me, Rune is just this like soft emo guy that's like wanting to help his sister and repair his relationship with her in book 1.
You know, it's deeply occurring to me right now that this might not have happened yet, and this might be a book 2 thing. And I am so sorry, Jablair. Sorry to everyone.
It's okay.
That was awkward. I didn't actually ruin anything. It's fine.
No, it's okay. I'm just like, when I read the notes, I was like, I don't remember Rune having a girl, but I believe he gets one eventually, you know?
Okay, that's so funny. Okay, well, in book 1, I think the reason people liked him as much in book 1, okay, book 2, he gets like a romance, it's great. Book 1, I think people like him the way they do, and I did a TikTok about it once, it was so funny, it was to that sound. Rune down. But I was like, the real reason we all love Rune is because his name doesn't start with an H, so we know who the fuck he is. Seriously, what is happening? Hunt, Find, Found, Harpy, Hellhound. What the fuck, man? I literally, even as we were getting into this podcast, we had to Google it again. Like, I had to, during my last reread, I did it with audiobook, I printed out a little chart because I was like, I cannot keep them straight. And I remember actually, you know how sometimes you assume it'll make more sense as you keep reading if you just like don't Google it? Like you just go. I distinctly remember reading book 1 and book 2. I remember I didn't Google it, and I should have. I was like, oh, it'll all just make sense later. Like someone will die off or something. There'll be less H's and I'll get it later.
Yeah.
And the way that never happened, I just instead remained consistently confused.
Yeah, we lost people who did not have H names instead.
Yeah, at least Hypaxia, I can keep that one straight. But like,
Yeah.
what happened? Did Sarah J Maas just like I almost feel like she lost a bet. You know what I mean? Someone was like she was in a gambling den, and someone was like,
she lost a bet with her other writer friends. Let's be real, that's probably what happened.
Totally, they're like upping the stakes, but the stakes is like ridiculous stuff in their books. You know, like you have to name 7 main-ish characters H names. Like,
yeah,
for publishers, like, what the hell is this? Honestly, it was out of control. At least we could pronounce them. Like,
oh
Rashand,
my gosh, yeah.
Who knows? Hind and Hound. At least I know how to pronounce them, but I just don't know who they are. Like,
right.
So funny.
Boy.
Okay, let's go back to the fact that you have a used copy, bitch. Because it's actually so funny. So there's some highlights in it, and I only know the first one, and it made me laugh so hard. So what is said at the beginning of this book?
Well, it was like maybe 100 pages in. Let me get to it. I tabbed a couple of things that were funny that I got in this book. So
these tabs are not from Jalaire, to be like, the tabs are, but like the notes are not.
The tabs are mine, but the content in it is not mine because I listened to the book.
So you're just going around and you're like, what?
Yeah. So they highlighted who like the archangel was and blah blah blah, and like right above that is a sticky note, like specifically a sticky note. I'll show it in a second, but it says, is anyone else high-key confused as fuck with this book so far?
So funny, because it's 100 pages in. But actually, I think that makes sense to me, because I think this book is a much more traditional fantasy book than ACOTAR and Throne of Glass. And that's not me saying those aren't fantasy books, but like, there's a trope in fantasy books, unfortunately. As a fantasy book girl, let me just tell you. Okay, if you're new here, let me tell you.
You're a resident fantasy girl here.
Yep. When you read a fantasy book, the first 200-300 pages, and I know it's a lot of pages, I'm so sorry I have to be the bearer of bad news, you'll have no idea what the fuck is happening. Because it's like you're just trying to understand the world, the new creatures, the magic,
the characters.
Whatever. You're just like, I literally couldn't tell you what is happening. And then suddenly, like, usually the last 200 pages are so good you want to die, you know? And so it's like, and this book is that perfect example of like, and I remember feeling the same way. It was really slow going for me when I read Crescent City 1, like really slow. And then suddenly you get to the last, I want to say 150 pages.
Yeah,
and
it was like the last 200 pages.
And there's like 5 main events per page, and it's amazing. It's the best action sequence I've ever read in my life.
Yeah, we'll talk about the end eventually, but honestly, probably one of my favorite endings to an SJM book because I understood what was happening.
It was, honestly, you could see how she had grown as a writer. I think it's the best, most compelling action I've ever read in a book. Because normally, like, war and battles and stuff, like, it's just not what I'm there for. Like, I like the politics, sure. But when it comes to war and battle, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. And so, I was invested. But like, you did have to get through the world building. And I think that almost makes it funnier that people are considering this book, as well as any other book written by a woman, just fairy porn.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is just a traditional fantasy book with 3 sex scenes. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, no, for real. It has so way less than ACOTAR, at least in book 1. I don't know about the others, but so then so that what the fuck is going on was after Danica's death, like a good 50 pages after. Yeah. Okay. But on the page where Bryce finds Danica, I know the person that previously had it was a woman, so that's why I keep saying she. She said, Danica lay there in pieces, and then in writing wrote, what the fuck, with like a WTF. And like, you know, the sentence isn't funny, but the WTF is funny.
No, the WTF is very funny. It's honestly iconic.
Yeah. It was a good one. Oh, okay. Okay, this one also made me laugh. So they highlighted Maximus Tertian's injuries were identical to the ones inflicted upon Danica Fenrir and the Pack of Devils. And then they wrote, gasp.
Honestly, I'm loving this just reactions for them. Like, it's not notes.
Yeah.
It's not whatever.
It's just gasp.
Were they doing this for our bestie? I'm invested in the plot that we will never know.
Yeah, I mean, they stopped highlighting on page 174.
Which makes me think they gave up. Like, I think they stopped reading. And that's why I will say it is worth the payoff. This book is worth the payoff. Like, fantasy books are slow burns. I don't know what to tell you. They're just slow burns.
Really. And then the last one, it was at the end of a chapter, and it's when Micah is saying Bryce Quinlan is to find the true murderer behind this, of course. And they just put question marks.
They're just like, I don't even know. Okay, actually, though, speaking of Micah, okay, when we were talking about how we didn't really like your reactions where you were like, is she going to end up with Rune? Which is still the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I mean...
Not blaming you. I mean, there was a book series that did that. I don't remember what it was called. But I remember it's one that you were into with Cassandra Clare. Wrote it.
Oh, yeah. It was the first City of Bones trilogy.
That one. Okay, so I mean, it's not unrealistic like guess of yours. Is what I was, but it is funny. No, I remember at one point. Okay, do you remember when Micah asks Bryce out because she's like being so fierce and just like owning space and just like laughing in the face of Sandriel? I laughed so fucking hard, and I was literally like, I thought it was iconic that she said no. It actually was the best thing I've ever seen. Like, where she's just like, I'm not interested. However, part of me thought, which is embarrassing considering we know now everything we know about Micah at the end, but I literally thought that, like, he was gonna, like, try to fight for her more, and that would be, like, this, like, little love tension moment, at least for a minute.
Interesting.
Because I was like, all right, Daddy Micah, which isn't funny because, like, we shouldn't like him at all.
We should not like him.
That one scene, though, he, like, recognized her power. I saw him do it, and I was like, yeah, get it. Most powerful man in the city wants to get with you. It's like, kind of hot. Anyway, that's my funny confession.
I also was very sad Connor died.
I loved Connor. I know, and then that's actually what made it so perfect how she killed off everyone, is we had just enough of them to be invested.
Yeah, no, seriously. I was like, okay, I know her best friend's gonna die. And so I was like, okay, when's it gonna drop? When's the pin gonna drop? And then when it happened, it didn't happen like how I anticipated it would. And it was so well written, because you're confused at first because Bryce is confused.
Right, because Bryce is, well, she's not even just confused, she's like drugged out of her mind, right?
Yeah.
So she's like,
like, I remember after her, like, from Bryce's POV outlining, like, what she's seen, I was like, why is she not, like, hold up, did she just think these things? And I had to go back 30 seconds because I listened to it. And I had to listen to it again because I was like, oh shit, this is where everyone's dead.
It was brutal. So I had no expectation that that's what was going to happen. And so I read it and I was like, what do you mean? We just did all this expose. What do you mean everyone just died? Like, I was...
Yeah.
And especially
like, you got me to care.
I know. And then she's chasing after the killer, which was awesome. But then it jumps forward to 2 years. And I was like, well, I stopped reading, actually, I think for at least a week or two. Because I was like, what? Like, I was like, you can't just kill everybody. Like, it would bug me so much. But this brings up...
I'm pretty sure I paused, too. Because I was like, okay.
You're like, I don't know how I feel about this, but Connor was so interesting. I loved him, to be clear, a lot. What I didn't love, though, speaking of, like, people slut-shaming Bryce and whatever, is after he died, something got said along the lines of, like, how the other, because the other wolves were so mad when her texts got leaked, where she was talking about sleeping with people and whatever. Sleeping specifically with a guy after agreeing to go on a date with Connor. So she had not gone on a date with Connor.
Nope.
To be clear on timeline. Yep. But she had agreed to go on a date. And it said something along the lines of like to the wolves, her saying she was going to go on a date with him was like essentially akin to being his mate. And so that was like a portrayal of the highest form because they'd been like circling each other for so long. And I got so fucking mad because like I'm all for a DTR, bitch. Like we should DTR. Like if you're going on dates with someone, you are dating, right? If you go on multiple dates with someone, it's exclusive fairly quickly. Like let's stop fucking around. Do you know what I mean?
It reminds me of that lady on TikTok that is like, no, this is what dating is.
I literally sent you another one today. She cracks me up so much.
I love her videos because she's speaking truths, you know?
She is speaking truth. Like it is called dating if you are dating. Okay, but it's so it's so funny. So that all being said, though, when people were saying like that was a tantamount to being mates with him, I was like, whoa, okay? Mates is a higher level of order than like marriage, right? Like you can't unbreak that. And so for people to be putting that on her for agreeing to a single fucking date, and again, agreeing to, she hadn't even gone on this date. I was so mad about it. And that has nothing to do with Connor, because Connor, I don't think would have approved of that language.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
I think, would it have sucked she slept with someone? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Probably. But also, he knew she was seeing other people at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he asked her out the same night she broke up with that one. Well, to be fair, he was a piece of shit. But that one guy.
Yeah. But she broke up with
that
him.
Same night. If we're being honest, she wasn't in the right state of mind to be agreeing to that date in the first place, bitch. You want to talk about why she was partying and stuff the way she was? That was a huge breakup. Her boyfriend was completely whatever, and she was a badass for being like, no, we're done, right? But like, Connor should have asked her out then.
Yeah.
For being honest.
I also
I still love him.
Yeah. No, for real. I also remember his younger brother, Ethan, being a piece of shit towards her too. And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
so it's interesting because I can see why Ethan's hurt, but he takes it to such an un-okay place. Yeah. Just because I can't imagine how hurtful it would be to read those kind of texts after your brothers died, where Bryce is laughing with her bestie about stuff. But I think that's key context. These were texts. No, this wasn't her publicly talking shit about Connor. Don't tell Connor I'm sleeping with a guy in the bathroom. That wasn't what she was doing. This wasn't a Twitter feed, right? Yeah. This was a text with her literal bestie in the entire world. And like, he gets to be hurt, and maybe it's weird to see her for a minute, but to say the things he said and be like, don't come to the fucking funeral is absolutely unacceptable, honestly.
I know. It broke my heart.
Yeah, and like, I have a lot of grace for Ethan, much more obviously than the other wolves, and he does so much great at the end, but it was something that really pissed me off. You want to talk about pisses you off, though? I actually have more sympathy for Ethan and how Ethan handles it, because he's very young when this all happens.
Yeah, totally.
Like, he's in college. I don't know if we know exactly how old he is, but maybe 19 or 20.
Yeah, I just know he was like an honorary squad member because Connor and the other wolves were there, right?
Yeah, he's a little too young to like be legit. But okay, you know who I'm more mad at? Fucking Danica.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me this, bitch. Tell me this. How you go about your life and not tell, because this is a ride or die bestie. This isn't like your close friend. This isn't whatever. These are ride or die besties. How are you gonna go through life and not tell your bestie this kind of shit?
No, seriously. It made me I was very angry with Bryce as she was learning this shit out. And it's like, holy shit. And it's in a not very similar way. It kind of made me think of Pretty Little Liars because like their girl that like their friend that like disappeared or died or whatever, and all the shit that happens in that show, she hid so many things that her besties didn't know. Yeah. So
no, that's a good comparison, I think. I think Danica, I think something that makes me mad too is like not just stuff that affected just Danica either. Like, this is stuff that affected literally Bryce and Bryce's safety in the world, and she didn't fucking tell her. Like, what do you literally mean? I was, it's funny too, because I was thinking about it, and it's like, There's a difference between not telling your bestie something, but they know anyway. And then truly, and you know that they know, and then truly not telling your bestie. In fact, actually, recently, Jalaire wasn't telling me something, but I fucking knew. It'd been like 3 months, and I'm not an idiot, and I knew. And I think on some level, I swear to God, I think you knew that I knew. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then when we finally were like, we finally were talking about it, and I was like, oh, cool, you're ready. Like, you're ready now. Like, that's why I didn't bring it up, because I knew that you were ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was like, and we had this great conversation, but it's like, there's something so different about that level of not telling your bestie something. Oh, yeah. And then like, she basically wasn't telling her bestie anything about her life, Danica. That's not even just like not sharing the gossip tea, the hot goss. No, okay?
It was literally like the most like life-changing shit. Especially like, I didn't expect their matching tattoos to mean and like become like what it was, you know?
Yeah. Like, she secretly has this horn, this weapon? Like,
that's
like
been
literally
missing?
inked onto her skin.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Insane. Yeah.
And so it's like, she put her at risk kind of by doing that too. Like, I know it ended up, like, it almost ended up killing her, bitch. And Danica just like, YOLO, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
What is that?
No.
What is that?
Yeah.
Like, there were just so many things. And then Danica was involved in so many things where, again, didn't tell her. And I just can't imagine. I guess I would, like, when I think maybe the real love story actually might be between Danica and Bryce. Even though Danica's
I believe that they were secretly, like, in love way more than her being with Hunt. Like, 100%. Even though people, like, in the story were, like, I remember in, like, the police investigations, I remember they asked Bryce, like, were you romantically involved with her? And she said no.
Right.
But I was like, you're lying to yourself.
No, okay, but I mean, that is true that sometimes girls do that, or like guys do that, right? When they're like not wanting to admit like not being straight or whatever. Yeah. But like, I do think like a true bestie-ship almost gives relationship vibes. I think that's why bestie love is almost more powerful than romantic love. It doesn't mean it has to be. I do think that's something a lot of people do nowadays, where they're like, oh, you have the vibe, so you need to just get together. And I'm like, okay, guys, no.
Like,
no, like that's not sexual orientation, but their relationship and their love is still powerful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think watching her grieve Danica was so powerful.
Like, she never fully stops grieving her, but then that's like a whole new, complete new wound of like grieving. And I just
cannot imagine having to find out, because then you don't want to think bad about your dead friend.
Yeah.
So you feel guilt probably for that. There's like too many emotions.
There was so much she was feeling, and I remember being emotional with her. I'm like, I don't even know how to feel. And I'm not Bryce. Like, are you kidding me? But then, like, at the end, when Danica appears, I'm still upset at Danica. But that whole moment where they were able to do the drop for her and line it up. Oh my gosh!
The fact that she said line it up. I was sobbing too. Okay, so that brings up a great segue. The ending. That 150 pages of just pure what is happening amazingness. Let's go over our top moments we cried. Because obviously that was one of them. Light it up.
That was one of them.
That was so powerful. What else?
Oh my gosh. When our sprite, I'm forgetting her name.
Lahaba.
Yeah. When she basically sacrificed herself, that made me cry.
It was so hard because she's saying on repeat, she's chanting, and this last time I did do the audio version, and it for some reason just unbuckled me. I was not okay.
It hurt. The reader did a great job with it.
She really did. She just kept saying, and I can't remember the name of the queen, but she was like, I'm a descendant of blah 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 blah, and I will not be afraid. And like chanting this affirmation as she stands guard, knowing she's about to die.
As you talk, I'm gonna see if I can find it.
I love that idea. And it just got me so bad, because it's like, this is something where like Bryce wasn't even really sure. Like, she was just like, okay, Lahaba, sure, you're a descendant of this super badass. Like, okay. But then also it's like, because because that means she's important. But then also it's like,
okay,
the idea of like chanting an affirmation as you die, like it was so powerful because she's like trying so hard to be so brave, but it's like admitting that you need to hype yourself, and I actually thought that was really powerful. Okay,
yeah,
who is it?
so I found it. She said, over and over, she said, I'm a descendant of Ranthia Dral, Queen of Embers. She is with me now, and I am not afraid. My friends are behind me, and I will protect them.
Too much. It's too much. And we're talking about with Lahaba. I mean, we've seen how Lahaba's kind of scared of Jezebel. Lahaba's scared of that evil water creature in the tank, you know, who has now died, luckily. Jesus, that was a scary scene. But like,
Right.
you know, she's scared of him because he's creepy and scary, and obviously he was, because he tried to kill Syrinx. But like, you know, we see her how afraid she is throughout the series. And so for her to then decide, and yeah, she knew she was free. She knew Bryce had bought her freedom. And you know, they were going to do a party for her. She knew that. She said she had seen the paperwork. So it's like, she's no longer a slave, and she tells Bryce, I want this to be my first free action, is to save my friends. And I just think, holy shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, nothing would have been possible. Like, Bryce obviously stuck the landing in a lot of ways in the war that ensues. But, like, none of this could have happened if Lahaba hadn't been there. Lahaba's power in that moment. I don't, and this is a bestie girly who will now never, something I keep thinking about with her, she'll never know the ending to her, like, that vampire weird smut show she loves.
Show she loved. Oh my gosh.
Where she, the way she would blush when, like, Bryce would tease her about it, and she's like, it's she would get bright red.
She's so relatable.
Cute and relatable. I was like, you go, queen. Like, that's not why you like it. I get it. Like,
yeah, no, for real. Yeah, even just on these 2 pages, she says, my friends are with me and I'm not afraid, like 5 times, at least written out.
It's,
I know. I'm like, I want to cry about it all over again.
Did kind of cry.
I mean, same, but, you know.
Okay. Something that also got to me, right? The city's being invaded. Humans are dying left and right. Bryce takes the time, to put, like, food out for Syrinx.
Yeah.
For her pet. And that immediately made me start sobbing, because I was like, what if this is where your brain goes, like, if she doesn't survive this, Syrinx will die. Now, technically, we know that Syrinx is crazy powerful, actually, like, of a magical creature, and, like, Bryce kind of babies Syrinx, and Syrinx just lets her, but, like, so Syrinx would be fine. But, like, I just was sobbing, because I was like, what if he's not going to be okay? Like, what if, you know, like, if Bryce weren't to come back, this animal just dies alone. That, I don't know, pets, man. But then secondly, she makes a phone call. She knows she's gonna die. The fucking phone call, bitch.
Phone call. Another good use of technology in this fucking book.
Such a good use. So everyone is watching on live cameras, because they're not in the city. The most powerful people in the world are not in the city, because they were at this political meeting, and so they're live watching footage of Bryce and of their city getting attacked, and they can't get there in time to do shit, right? And she's on the phone, and she calls up her brother, and she's telling him that she loves him, and that, you know, whatever. And you know, because he's trying to make up from when they were kids, he was an asshole, which he was, to be fair. And, like, I just thought it was so incredibly powerful. And then also the fact it was on speakerphone, so her dad is having a reaction to it. Yeah. And when he hears her say, because Bryce says, tell my parents I love them, and tell my dad, and then you see her dad perk up.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then
it was clear.
She specifies she didn't mean him, right? Because of course she didn't fucking mean him. And, like, I just thought it was just so crazy. The whole thing was so powerful. Like, I felt like I was watching the TV screens with them, honestly.
Same. And I just remember sobbing, because it was like, she's doing her will, basically. Like, like, if she was to write a will, you know, of just goodbyes, that's essentially what she did. And I was
she knew she was going to die.
Yeah.
This was
like,
our last phone call.
Not, you know, like, SJM can kill people, you know, it's fine. Yeah. It's happened. Like, it's always sad. But I was like, holy shit. Like, this is just book 1, and this is our main character. Like, I fully believe she was gonna die. Okay.
I think I thought she might not, but even if she didn't, the emotional impact of her thinking she was gonna die is high.
Totally. Yeah.
The fact that
Sorry.
the nukes were involved too was the craziest thing that has ever. Like, I was just like, what is happening? Like, yeah, there's missiles, there's this, there's that. It was like so much.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I found the pages with this phone call, right?
Yeah.
And when she's like, tell my dad, and then it's like, tell Randall that I'm so proud I got to call him my father, that he was the only one that ever mattered.
Yeah, the Autumn King hearing that was so powerful. Oh, such a good line. And then,
Yeah.
you know, we have to shout out the fact, so the wolves, including Ethan, come and help Bryce, and they're the only ones to do so. All the other magical quarters shut their doors, and humans are getting slaughtered. And Ethan and his pack of wolves come and they're helping. And that was so powerful. But honestly, you know what got me the most, I think, is the head wolf guy, the alpha of like the entire wolf kingdom. He says, when it's just Bryce on the screen, he says, a true wolf. And I just was like, because obviously she's not a wolf, but he's saying that's what we are. We protect people. We stand up for people. And he comes out of his like dementia fog to say that. That was really powerful.
Totally. I also just came across this bit with the phone call was where she says, tell Juniper thank you for that night on the roof, because I totally forgot that Bryce almost killed herself.
Oh shit, I forgot about that. That was hard to read.
I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I know they like never talked about it again. Like her and Juniper never did. Understandably so. But the fact that she was saying like, thank you for being there for me that day, I was like, oh my gosh.
I thought it was so emotional that Juniper just knew. She just knew. Like, everyone was being so cruel because, again, she's not the perfect victim. Everyone's being so cruel to Bryce and blaming her for something she had no accountability in. And really, she's the one that went and saved Micah's life that night. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet she's made out to be the bad guy. It's crazy, but like she's just done. And somehow Juniper just knew she was there. Like she was there, and then she just stayed there. Like she just was like it's not like, oh, do you want me to stay over? She's like just like takes up camp, like, you know what I mean? Just an assumed thing. And it's so powerful to read. Bryce is honestly one of the most relatable, I think, SJM women. In a lot of ways.
And I remember, like, I promise this is related. It's going to sound like a tangent.
It's okay if it's a tangent.
So
this might as well be called the Tangential Podcast.
No, seriously. But so back in November, I went to a midnight release party for Iron Flame, and I went with a few people that are like I've known for a long time, but are more so like acquaintances, honestly. But they knew I liked the book, so they were like, "Do you want to come?" Right? And so I went with them, and of course we were wandering around Barnes & Noble, and we ended up at SGM's books, right? And so they were asking me if I'd read Crescent City yet, and I said no. And one of the girls with me, we ended up talking about it a bit, but she said Crescent City is actually her favorite SGM series. And I was like, okay, that's not one that I hear a lot, you know?
Yeah.
It's usually the other two. And maybe that's because Crescent City's not over yet. I don't know. But after reading this first book, and again, it's so drastically different than her other works, I was like, I can 100% understand why it would be like a favorite, you know?
I get it. I for sure get it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I do think it's like, yeah, not the answer you normally hear, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong answer. I also think it can highly depend on the age someone is when they start reading SJM books. Because I've long said this about ACOTAR, because I'll see this content where women are like, oh, I knew about Tamlin. Hair flip. Like, how did anyone like Tamlin? And I'm like, okay, it's because it was YA, and you are 28 years old. Like, yeah, I would hope you can see through his fucking red flags by now. But, like, for a lot of us, like, you know, to be fair, I was a lot older than 18. I was a lot older than YA, but, like, I was just behind on certain things. But, like, I fell for Tamlin's shit, too.
I mean, same.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of like, when you read a dark romance or something and you're like, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to like this person that's awful, but I like them,
Yeah, well, I almost didn't even see as many of his red flags. Yeah, I agree.
Right.
And so it's like,
Yeah.
it's part of our learning process. And so I think that's why, like, ACOTAR girlies or whatever, like ACOTAR the best, because for them, this taught them how to not be in abusive relationships, toxic relationships. And so I think,
Totally.
like, if you're younger when you first start reading ACOTAR, you might relate most, or to SJM books, you might relate most to ACOTAR. But if you're older, Crescent City, in a lot of ways, is a more mature book. And so I think, of course, that's going to speak to you more. And so I think, like, people forget that about the discussion is like, yeah, like, which one did you travel onto? Like, that's the question. They're all great books.
Yeah,
now, if we want to talk about which has the best action sequence, it's Crescent City, hands down. So, I mean, that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, I just had never heard anybody tell me that Crescent City was their favorite, so I was just taken aback. So,
oh, absolutely.
Again, it's not the wrong opinion. There is no wrong opinion, but it's definitely the unpopular one.
A lot of people trash on it, but I'm glad that you've read it now.
Me too.
Okay, I'm looking through the outline. I actually think we hit on everything. Is there anything else you want to make sure we talk about?
No, I think we touched on everything. I have technically started book 2, but I have a problem with every SJM book that I read. I'll get through the last 200 pages where it's all epic and fun, and then I start the next book, and I'm like, this is boring. And then I put it to the side for a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready. And then I come back.
It's valid to need a break between fantasy books. It's okay. We won't give you crap. If a new one was coming out, I'd give you crap.
Yeah.
But you have time. So
I've got time.
You have time. Hopefully, though, by next quarter, we can do a podcast episode about Crescent City 2. LOL.
Yeah.
All right.
Wait.
What?
Do you think by the time we eventually talk about the third one, do you think you're going to reread it?
I mean, it depends on how slow you are. Then maybe.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel like I go through these books a lot. I do kind of I feel like I do all the SJM ones I do on audiobook, like, binge.
Yeah, because you're rereading ACOTAR right now, right?
Yeah. I kind of paused it for some reason. So I switched to, it got too powerful, and I was, like, crying a lot. So I switched to paper, and then, like, physical reading, and then that meant I wasn't moving as quickly. So we're working on it. Although, okay, so Brian has just started reading The Hunger Games for the first time in his life. Like, he's never read it.
Let's go!
Like, I was like, how did you miss this as a kid? Everyone read Hunger Games.
I'm like, he's my age. How did he miss it?
It doesn't make sense. And he hadn't watched the movies, which is probably for the best, without the book context. And I'm, like, literally so fucking excited I could die. So I'm going to be rereading Hunger Games, and actually I'll have him on the podcast. We're going to do deep dives, probably of the Hunger Game books.
Dude, let's all do that. I love those books so much.
Amazing. Yeah, you gotta brush up. You gotta brush up, and let's do it.
Let's do it.
So my hope is that we'll start doing the podcast weekly between you and me, and me and Brian. So we'll have to cross over a little bit on maybe some extra times. But, like, wouldn't that be so cool?
That would be fun. Also, everybody, Tortured Poets Department comes out in a few days.
Literally? That should have been our high. What the fuck were we talking about? Everything else is stupid. Who cares about my illustrated fairy tale? We literally, is today Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday. It comes out tomorrow evening.
So tomorrow fucking night, bitch. Okay, and then, so actually, fun podcast news for all of you. Anyone that's listening. Brian and I will record an episode on Saturday with our reaction to the first half of the album. It will go up live on Sunday. Then Jalera and I are going to record our reaction to the second half of the album. So we're going to do a deep dive on the new album. I have zero regrets about this decision. I think it's kind of funny because, like, we don't niche down at all in our podcast, but I love that for us. I don't know. It's like too many things. I don't know.
It's really exciting. But speaking of exciting things, what FanCorner announcements do you have?
Nothing as cool as that.
You talked about your fairy tale earlier, so that's another that is an announcement in and of itself, you know.
That's true. You know, I actually want to make sure I hype a few, since we're talking about the ACOTAR series, there's a few artists that I really like. that do ACOTAR things, not just me.
Mm-hmm.
So Royal Coven, who actually made this sweatshirt that I'm wearing right now. Look how cute this is.
Slay. Look at that little
This
Pascal.
little Pascal. And then look at this. There's like a crown on the hoodie.
Oh, shut up. I love that.
I know. Isn't it so beautiful? Okay, and I'm obsessed with these. And I'm a hoodie girly. Like, Jolaire knows this. It'll be the middle of summer, and I have a fucking little...
She'll be like, oh my gosh, it's cold.
Well, and it's like, I just don't like my skin bare. It's a weird thing. It's just so weird. But like, I'll wear short shorts and skirts. I don't know. I'm a weird woman. But so, I'm obsessed with these hoodies. They're such good quality. But she is licensed with SJM. And has like a lot of hoodies, like Crescent City, ACOTAR, all the things. I have the one that says Cursebreaker, but she has some really cool ones. Like I know about like the Valkyries and things like that. So that's amazing. So check her out. I will tag all these in the show notes. And then secondly, there's this little pin maker who makes some cool little stuff, including some ACOTAR, but like anything. Her name's HereComesTheNerd. And it's her birthday today. I know, it actually is so fucking cute. I actually just met her, ironically, like literally a week ago, 2 weeks ago at WonderCon. And now awesome. I'm like obsessed with her. It's fine. Anyway, so Here Comes the Nerd.
Wait.
Check her out.
Can I shout out an artist?
Yes, please.
That does stuff? Okay. So
but then send me the tag after.
Yeah, I will. So I've actually given Rachel prints from this artist before. But online they're called ALemonLeaf, all one word. And she's this amazing artist that makes literally ACOTAR, Crescent City, Throne of Glass, like ship like pairing portraits that look like classical paintings.
Is that the one that's like the Starfell one you got me?
It's the black and white one.
Oh yeah. Okay, I like that one. That one's better.
Yeah. And she does a lot of art for other fandoms. Like she does a lot of Pride and Prejudice, if you're into that, and like Anastasia and, you know, what have you. But like she's mostly known for her SJM universe prints. So
oh my god,
recommend.
I should have shown my artwork I bought. That, like, really expensive artwork. God, I do not remember her name to save my fucking life. But no, I do. Okay, it came to me. Olivia Rose James. She does like intense paintings. Like, okay, I'm not shading anyone else we've talked about, okay? But like, Here Comes the Nerd, me, whatever, like with my miniatures, we're not the same kind of thing. I'm talking like, do you know what I mean? Like huge canvases kind of art. Do you know what I'm saying? With paint. And it's like, she made some of like the moment when like Rashand almost breaks and Feyre almost breaks. And like things like that. And then like ones of like Rashand putting like, well, shadow hands putting a crown on Feyre's head. So how he was seeing her before she saw herself that way. And it's so fucking cool. Like her mind is amazing. It's all dark. Like she only paints in like kind of monochrome, which is crazy, but it's highly realistic. It's highly fucking cool. I bought like a low-key just dropped $450 I don't have on this woman's art. It's fine.
To be fair, they're huge prints. They're huge.
They're massive. So she has started adding littler ones. So like you have options now. So go check her out even if you don't have a lot of money. When she first started doing them, this was the only option, and I was like, I have to have it. I don't give a fuck. Bye. Like, that was like literally how it went. Yeah, I was like,
add to cart.
I was like crying while watching her TikTok about making it. Like visceral, like just tears down my face. So a lot of good stuff out there, honestly, I would say. Like the fans are turning up, but here's what we will not be doing, everybody. We will not be using fucking AI instead of real artists. Is what we will not be fucking doing. That's my TED Talk on that. Because the soul is what brings the emotion. In terms of my business, though, I'll be in Chicago next week for C2E2.
Ayo.
Maybe Jolaire will come with me.
Maybe.
Probably
we'll
not.
Have to talk about it. Probably
fucking
not.
Flights are so expensive. They're giving me a lot of exhibitor passes, and so I'm like, Jolaire, come with.
I wish. If I had money.
No, these flights actually were very expensive. And then other than that, my leaf buddies, my leaf spirits are now ring protectors, so those got launched.
Cute.
And my rubber ducky line's out, so go check them out. I worked really hard on them. So,
they're really cute.
voted on them, so please actually now buy them.
Maybe.
And they're waterproof. Like, even like the sticker sheet itself is waterproof. Sticker sheets aren't normally, but I'm passionate about that. So you can like put them on your freaking water bottles, filler stickers, honestly, even, or like in your planner, or whatever.
Hold up.
It's a little puff guy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, no, that was
Thanks,
Harry.
Joy.
This is the puff one.
Oh wow. Oh, I gave you 2. Look at me go. There, and so there's like 8 different characters, whatever mood you're in, and then I have some big ones too. So check them the frick out if you want to see all the characters. I had someone that was up in my thing, and they were like, "Why didn't you do Dumby Duck as a big one?" And I was like, "Bitch, I would love to. I have to sell some of these first until these sell."
I have to. Have you heard of supply and demand?
Yeah, no, seriously. It was so cute. It was so supportive of them, and I actually love the Dumby Duck one too. It was hard to decide which 2 to make big, but like, if you don't buy them, I can't make them big. So I also have people asking if I'll make them as pins, but again, if you don't buy them, it's not gonna happen. Them. Do you know what I mean? No amount of just you hyping them on the internet makes the next product. So true. That's my harsh reality TED talk for everybody. But like, not in a mean way. If you don't want them, don't buy them. But just like, ask for things that you're not gonna buy. I don't know.
Yep, I feel that.
LOL. Okay, so that is the end of my thing. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Thank you, Jalaire, for reading Crescent City so we could do this. Yeah!
I know it took a million years, but we did it.
We did it, and we are having a great time doing it. We have a lot of great podcast episodes coming out for you, so please make sure to subscribe, like, save, review, share on social media. You know the things. But on top of that, DM us if you disagree with anything we said. I would love to talk about it. And otherwise, I hope you have a very magical day.
Honestly, that'd be a cute thumbnail too.